Hello and welcome to the Third Choice Music channel, where you can scratch your retro music itch. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video for more great music content, including album reviews and rankings. The year 1987. The band Earth, Wind & Fire. The album Touch the World. When looking at the history of the legendary band, one could find a great many number of amazing albums rich with all sorts of musical influences, including soul, R&B, rock, jazz, disco, and pop among other influences. When looking through Earth, Wind & Fire's history, one could also find all sorts of accolades and accomplishments, as well as staying power, which has allowed Earth, Wind & Fire to remain active since its inception in 1970. With all of that being said, and all of the amazing albums that Earth, Wind & Fire have released from 1972 to 2014, why Touch the World? Well, two reasons. Because it's an album that has impressed me since I first heard it, and also the simple fact that I'm a sucker for 80s music. For a quick and brief history, Earth, Wind & Fire is an American band hailing from Chicago, Illinois, and forming in 1970. The band at the time consisted of Maurice White, Wade Flemons, Don Whitehead, Sherry Scott, and Maurice White's brother, Verdine White. Near the beginning of 1971, the band released their first self-titled album and was a minor hit on the Billboard Top Soul Albums, reaching number 24. From there, multiple albums were released between 1971 and 1972, including The Need of Love in 1971, which was notable for being the last album to feature Sherry Scott, Don Whitehead, and Wade Flemons. Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song soundtrack, also in 1971, and Last Days and Times in 1972, which was notable for adding band members Ralph Johnson to the band on drums and percussion, and Philip Bailey, who provided vocals and also played percussion. Now, I won't get too deep into band members for Earth, Wind & Fire because the number of band members that would be around for an album or two and then leave would be enough to make your head spin. Interestingly enough, Philip Bailey, Ralph Johnson, and Verdine White still tour to this day under the name of Earth, Wind & Fire, with Verdine White being the sole original member within the band. Despite the number of albums that were released between 1971 and 1972, not many major hits came from this time period in the band's history, outside of a hit here or there. However, the band began to really gain steam around 1973 with the album Head to the Sky, which featured the song Head to the Sky, and from there a number of albums were released with notable albums including That's the Way of the World in 1975, which featured the hit singles Shining Star and That's the Way of the World, All in All in 1977, which featured the single Serpentine Fire and Fantasy among others, I Am in 1979, which featured the hit singles Boogie Wonderland, After the Love Has Gone, In the Stone, and Can't Let Go, and the album Raise in 1981, which featured the big single Let's Groove. Throughout the 70s, Earth, Wind & Fire released non-studio albums, and 12 if you count the Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song soundtrack, the Another Time compilation album, and the Best of Earth, Wind & Fire Volume 1, which is a greatest hits album and featured the mega hit September and Got to Get You Into My Life. I say all of this to say that Earth, Wind & Fire had their most successful period during the 70s, with enough hits to fill 2 albums by the year of 1979 alone. If you look back on it, the 70s were a bit of a growing pain for Earth, Wind & Fire. If you look at their work in the early 70s between 1971 and 1972, releasing roughly 4 albums in between that time period, you would think that this band probably would not make it anywhere out of 1974. However, by 1973, they were on and moving and never looked back. However, there is something interesting that happens to mega successful bands and solo musical acts that are able to make and sell multiple albums. A test, if you will. What is that test? Well, the dawn of a new decade, of course. I often like to look at how acts that were hugely popular during a particular decade are able to progress and thrive within the next decade. We all know the musical landscape changes quite often, and the ultimate test for a band or solo musical act is, how will they be able to maintain the momentum going into a new decade? I think about major acts such as Michael Jackson, Prince, Madonna, etc., and how their careers fared between decades. In any case, as Earth, Wind & Fire entered the new decade of the 80s, they were met with many challenges, as any band or act would, that released their first album in 1971, and had also released non-studio albums by 1979. How does a band or act stay relevant without sounding stale or evolving their music to fit with the times while keeping their core sound? Let's find out. So Earth, Wind & Fire began the 80s with the album Faces in 1980, Raise in 1981, and then after taking a break for a year, came back in 1983 with 2 albums released within the same year, including Powerlight and Electric Universe. The first since they released 2 albums in 1971 with their self-titled album and The Need of Love. Earth, Wind & Fire attempted to maintain their core sound with the albums Faces, Rays, and Powerlight. However, with the exception of Rays, Faces in 1980 and Powerlight in 1983 saw the band slowly begin sliding down the music charts. A new decade can be so cruel sometimes to musical acts and bands. By the end of 1983, and with the release of Electric Universe, Earth, Wind & Fire's decline was complete. Now, I am still unsure as to the true reason as to why Maurice White decided to go in such a radical direction with Electric Universe, in which he opted for more of an electric pop sound. But it helped to cement the slide down the charts, peaking at number 40 on the US top LPs and tape chart. Perhaps more on that at a later date. Fragments within the band begin to show as well, as Philip Bailey released his first solo album, Continuation, in 1983, and his biggest solo album to date, In Chinese Wall, which was released in 1984, as well as founding member and lead singer Maurice White releasing his first solo self-titled album in 1985. Despite Philip Bailey and Maurice White going on to release solo albums, both remained dedicated to the band of Earth, Wind & Fire, and thus Touch the World was released in 1987. So back to my initial question, why Touch the World? As I stated earlier, I love 80s music, but also because the album, despite some flaws, is a really solid album and can be argued to be the band's best album out of the 5 they released during the 80s. Touch the World is an interesting album in that it sees Earth, Wind & Fire at a pivotal time in their career. The album honestly was a make-or-break situation for the band, as their previous 2 albums did not fare as well on the charts as some of their earlier work. Also, at the same time, Earth, Wind & Fire really didn't have much to prove at this point. However, perhaps they wanted to show that they could be current with the times. Not for a lack of trying, Earth, Wind & Fire attempted to do this with the Electric Universe album in 1983, in terms of trying to remain current with the evolving sound of the time while trying to maintain their soul and R&B sound. But you could also tell with the Electric Universe album that they were moving in a more pop direction with their sound overall. So here we are with the Touch the World album. Touch the World is a mix of mostly R&B, dance, and pop spread between 10 total songs. I mean, this album truly has it all. It has the dance tracks, it has the ballads, it has the standard pop songs, a gospel-influenced song, and even an instrumental interlude piece, all of which I will get into shortly. The album continues the band's message of positivity and love, but also serves as commentary on the current state of affairs within the United States at the time. The common theme shared on the album outside of love and positivity is the fact that more money is needed in the general economy, and on songs like System of Survival, the song appears to be sung from the perspective of the blue-collar working Joe. The album was released in late 1987 and was mostly produced by Preston Glass, Maurice White, Bill Myers, along with Philip Bailey and Wayne Vaughn receiving co-producing credits. 4 singles were released from the album, including the biggest hit of the album, System of Survival, reaching number 1 on Billboard Hot R&B Singles Chart, as well as the Billboard Hot Dance Music Club Play Chart. You and I, the 1987 version, Thinking of You, and Evil Roy. The Touch the World album had a relatively short time on the charts, in which the first single, System of Survival, was released on September 22nd of 1987, and the final single, Evil Roy, releasing on March 22nd of 1988. Despite this, the album performed better on the charts overall from the previous album, Electric Universe, in which it peaked at number 33 on the Billboard 200 charts and on the Billboard Top Soul Albums charts at number 3. Let's dissect the album and see where Touch the World shines and falters at. So the album begins with the first track and first single released from the album, System of Survival, in which the song begins with what appears to be someone flipping through stations on a radio. The first station turned to on the radio has a news reporter asking, "Where is the money?" And upon turning to the next station, former President Ronald Reagan can be heard stating he will not tell falsehoods to the American people, and that he will leave that to others. The song starts proper and is a funky upbeat dance track that has a simple yet up-tempo drum beat with a frantic keyboard pattern of notes and guitar interspersed throughout the song. The interesting thing about this song is that the bass doesn't kick in until near the end of the first chorus and middle to the end of the second verse, and then is mostly played regularly throughout the remainder of the song. I actually like that the bass isn't played during the first verse because it makes it all the more impactful when it comes in towards the middle of the second verse. Maurice takes lead on the song with Philip singing background and also sings post-chorus lines. In the song, Maurice sings about the economy and how bad things are in his area. However, despite the bad things going on around him, such as simply trying to make a living and the streets not being safe to walk at night, he will continue to dance and remain positive as a system of survival. Despite the song being an upbeat dance track, if you really listen to the lyrics, they contrast greatly with the dance vibe and kind of provide an unsettling atmosphere of the way things were at the time of the release of the album. I love this song as it is up-tempo and fast-paced, and I think it works for the song. Good choice for a lead-off single for the album in my opinion. The next song, Evil Roy, also serves as the fourth and final single released from the album. The song is another funky dance track which sounds a lot like most of the upbeat R&B and dance tracks that were being released around the time. The track has a combination of the bass, guitar, drums, and keys playing in conjunction with one another throughout the track. The song's bassline riff sounds similar to the band Starship's bassline in their song Trouble in Mind from their 1989 album Love Among the Cannibals. Maurice sings lead on the song with Philip again singing background, and this time Maurice sings about a person who is doing drugs and whose life is being cut short due to them using drugs and not doing anything with their life, including not even having a job. I don't really care for this song as much, as it's yet another commentary piece on the current state of poor black neighborhoods around that time frame. I mean, don't get me wrong, the message is strong, despite being poignant and are relevant for even today's time. However, I feel like the first track, System of Survival, did a better job of relaying the message overall. Probably one of my least favorite tracks on the album due to the song being a simple and standard dance track that doesn't stand out to me in any way. And the lyrics, while again relaying a strong message, aren't lyrics that I really want to sing. But can you imagine, listening to the song, you bobbing your head, you start singing the lyrics. He gets wild at night, gotta sleep all day, 'cause he's wound so tight, blowing his brains away. I don't know about that. Next is Thinking of You, the third single released from the album. The song is a nice blend of pop and R&B that is also another upbeat dance track. I love the Asian influence with the sounds of the keys that begin the track. I also think the drums sound very bombastic and live on this track. Verdine White does his thing on bass on this song. The bass line is simple in scope, but it definitely grooves with the slight variations, keeping the track fresh overall. Maurice takes lead vocals on this song again, with Philip singing a small bridge between choruses towards the middle of the song. Wanda Vaughn provides the female singing voice on the track that sings the chorus. In the song, Maurice sings of thinking about a woman that he would like to be his. Based on the lyrics in the song, it's hard to tell if Maurice is already with the woman and is simply thinking of her, or if he is thinking about how he would like the woman to be his. Who knows? In any case, the song is great. I love it. And this is the type of song that I would expect Earth, Wind & Fire to do around this time. It still has that R&B feel with how the song is sung and harmonized, but the instrumentation and chorus lends it a pop flair. The combination works and is one that I come back to periodically when listening to the album. The next song, You and I, 1987 version, was the second single released from the album. This song is interesting in that it is called You and I, 1987 version. The last song on Earth, Wind & Fire's 1979 album, I Am, is also called You and I, and is a completely different song in how it sounds and the lyrics. I was never entirely sure if they were paying tribute to the 1979 version of the song, or if they just decided to do a completely different song and just happened to name it You and I. I tend to go with the latter instead of the former only because the instrumentation and the lyrics are completely different. I would feel a tribute would at least keep the same lyrics and change up the instrumentation to match the times. However, the song does neither. It's simply a completely different song with the same title, which is interesting because I can't think of another band or solo act that named two completely different songs with the same title on two separate albums. Please let me know in the comments if this has been done before. This time around, the band slows things down and Philip Bailey takes lead on this ballad. The keys and bass take primary duties during the verses, and the bass and drums take over during the chorus. In the song, Philip sings of how he can't imagine living in the world without his significant other's love, and that their love is his security, and that there can be no one else but them. The lyrics are beautiful and can really get the message across of how much someone means to you. Despite the wonderful lyrics, the song is a tad bit too sappy and slow for me. I do enjoy the chorus though. However, this is a song that I often skip. Philip has another ballad coming up that sounds better to me overall than this particular track, and I will definitely get into that a little bit later. Next is the instrumental interlude called Musical Interlude New Horizons. The track starts with snippets of previous Earth, Wind & Fire hits including Shining Star, That's the Way of the World, Reasons, Magnetic, Let's Groove, and September. The track then jumps to keys playing random sets of notes and a kalimba drum, and keys that sound so 80s it's ridiculous. At the 1 minute mark, the keys that are being played on the keyboard sound like they are trying to imitate a horn. Listening to this song, the keys sound like music that you would hear during a B movie or something. They sound really cheap. That's the best way I can describe it. Despite the archaic sound of the keys, I love the track overall. It has a fast pace to it that I love. Also, although the track is instrumental, it kind of tells a narrative in a way in which the first couple of songs you hear when the track begins are previous Earth, Wind & Fire songs, and then the track jumps to what the current sounds at the time were. If anything, the track lets the listener know where they have been with the band's previous songs and where they are going with the new and evolved sound. Basically, New Horizons in a nutshell. The next track is entitled Money Tight and starts side 2. The track is a semi-up-tempo number in which Maurice takes lead singing duties and sings of thinking about his baby so much that rent is due and he is slipping on his job because all he thinks about is his baby. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Those are some serious thoughts. I mean, point blank. That is wild that you are thinking about your baby so much that you are literally about to go poor because all you do is daydream about them. You might want to go get help for that. Just saying. Maurice also sings at one point in the song that despite his pockets being bare, his baby is always there. The only thing I have to say to that is that is one good woman he has there. And I'm going to leave it at that, because if a woman is willing to stay around with a man who has no money and is making money, but is starting to lose out on money because all he can do is think about her, what are they going to do? Be broke together? I don't think so. Anyway, the keys dominate this track with a nice little bass groove. I initially didn't care for this song and would often skip it when listening to the album, but I must say that it has grown on me over the years. I think it's mainly due to the catchy chorus in which Maurice sings, "Money's tight with me." I dig it. Every Now and Then is the next track on the album and is a slower paced song in which Maurice takes lead singing duties again. Keys and bass are the primary instruments on the song, with drums providing a nice backing rhythm. In the song, Maurice sings about a recently failed relationship that he often thinks about every now and then. Maurice sings that he has recently started going out since the end of the relationship and poses the question, how long can anybody go without before you start going out of your mind? You can really tell that Maurice is really going through it in this song. Despite his current issues, he often still thinks about what could have been with his ex. I love this track. I often don't care for slow tracks, but this one works for me. I love the way the verses are sung, and I love the ending where Maurice sings and the song fades out. Good stuff. Next is the gospel-twinged pop title track, Touch the World. The bass has a pulsing groove on the song, along with the keys and the drums providing the backing rhythm, with the guitar coming in mostly during the chorus. Maurice shares lead singing duties with Philip Bailey along with members of the Hawkins family, a famous gospel family comprised of multiple gospel singers. The song is another commentary on strife in which the first verse discusses a woman losing her job and having to work the streets to make money to feed her family, while the second verse discusses people starving for food as their babies die. The third verse tells of a man on the pipe and having the shakes and is ultimately locked up by the police as a result, while the fourth and final verse talks of a 14-year-old teenager being pregnant with a child. During the chorus, everyone sings of how they can touch the world and help everyone to believe in Jesus. The song is probably one of the most outright gospel tracks that the band has done. I love this song, specifically the second and third verses. The chorus is just okay. However, the chorus can't keep me away from this song as it doesn't really outstay its welcome. One of my favorite songs off of the album, despite how preachy it can sound at times. Next is the second ballad sung solely by Philip Bailey entitled Here Today and Gone Tomorrow. Philip Bailey's falsetto is unmatched, and he really displays it well on this song. The song is slower paced, and in the song, Philip sings of how important it is to cherish the precious time with your significant other due to how quickly someone can be here today and be gone tomorrow. Out of the two ballads that Philip sings on the album, I prefer this always over the You and I 1987 version track. The song is effective in its message, and who better to sing it than Philip Bailey? Probably my second or third favorite track on the album. On to the final track of the album, we have Victim of the Modern Heart. The song is an upbeat number which sounds similar to System of Survival in a number of ways. However, the bass and the keys are front and center on this song, with the drums not too far off. Maurice sings the verses while Philip sings the chorus. In the song, Maurice sings about a person not wanting to reveal their true feelings for him due to being afraid of falling in love, thus being a victim of the modern heart. The song definitely has a pop feel to it that I like. This is the track that I typically come back to the most on the album, believe it or not. Overall, the Touch the World album is a solid album by a legendary band. Some, if not most, would possibly write the album off as late 80s dribble, but if you listen to the album, you won't be disappointed. My ranking for Touch the World is an 8.5 out of 10. A truly solid album from beginning to finish, with a nice and even pace to the tracks. Even the tracks that I don't really care for, I really don't mind listening to, and won't outright avoid. Here are the songs I'm keeping, and here are the songs I can do without. After this album, the band would release a follow-up with their next studio album, Heritage, in 1990. From there, Earth, Wind & Fire would continue to decline on the charts, and by the late 90s, founding member and lead singer Maurice White revealed that he was struggling with Parkinson's disease, and by 2004 was done working with the band. Maurice White ultimately passed in 2016, and Philip Bailey, Ralph Johnson, and Verdine White continue to tour and release occasional albums and songs with other artists. Please let me know in the comments what your favorite song off of the album is. If you've never listened to the album before, and this review has urged you in any way to listen to it, please let me know in the comments what you thought of the album, and also let me know your favorite song. If you would like to help the channel grow, please subscribe and like the video. Until next time, bye!